Good afternoon, students. So today we are going to study about Parthenocarpy, Apomixis and Polyembryony. So let's have a talk about Parthenocarpy. Parthenocarpy, Parthenos is without and carpi is fruit, right? So it is a type of a process where there is a formation of fruit without the process of the pollination and fertilization, right? So we have generally studied that generally the formation of the fruit takes place with the help of the fertilization. But yes, besides that, there is a process where there is no fertilization, there is no pollination, yet there is a formation of a fruit. That process is generally called as Parthenocarpy, right? So when you talk about Parthenocarpy, the Parthenocarpy is generally of two different types. One is called as natural Parthenocarpy and second is generally called induced Parthenocarpy or artificial Parthenocarpy. What is natural Parthenocarpy? It is a type of a process where there is formation of a fruit without the process of the pollination and fertilization. That means that there is no pollination. If there is no pollination, the pollen grain will not get deposited on the stigma. There is no formation of pollen tube carrying male gamete, hence no fertilization with the female gamete. So there is a formation of a fruit. Such kind of a Parthenocarpy is generally called as natural Parthenocarpy in absence of pollination and fertilization. Example, banana, right? Second one is generally called as induced Parthenocarpy. Induced Parthenocarpy is also called as artificial Parthenocarpy, where there is a formation of a fruit, but the flowers here are generally sprayed by some of the growth promoting hormone such as indole acetic acid, naphthalene acetic acid, gibberellin, etc. These are all the growth promoting hormones which are generally spread on the flowers, due to which your induced Parthenocarpy or artificial Parthenocarpy can be gained, right? Okay, now here this induced Parthenocarpy is nothing but artificial Parthenocarpy by generally giving the doses of your hormones, right? It might be your auxins or gibberellin. The best example is there are certain tomatoes, I mean to say seedless tomato, are generally produced if they are generally treated with a high dose of auxin. And also there are certain grapevine, if they are generally treated with gibberellin, they generally produces the seedless fruit. So here, as we spray growth promoting hormone, it is generally called induced Parthenocarpy or it is called artificial Parthenocarpy. So that's what all about your natural Parthenocarpy and induced Parthenocarpy. Okay, so the basic significance of the Parthenocarpy is that whatever the fruits which are generally produced, seedless fruit, they are generally having a higher commercial value. Okay, let's talk about the next topic, which is called apomixis. Apo is without, mixis is mixing. So without the mixing of the gamete is apomixis. So we all know that apomixis is a mode of asexual reproduction where there is a formation of a new individual without the process of the fertilization and there is no involvement of the sex gamete. No involvement of the sex gamete, no fertilization. That mode of asexual reproduction is generally called as apomixis, right? Okay, now when you talk about this apomixis, there are two stages. One is generally called as apogamy and second is generally called apospory. Apo is without, right, and gamy is gamete. So what happens in apogamy, that is a single gametophytic cell or a organ will generally produce a embryo-like structure without the process of the fertilization. That is generally called as apogamy. That is without the gamete there is a formation of an embryo-like structure. That is called apogamy. Second condition is apospory. Apo is without and spory is without the spore, right? So here what happens is that a diploid sporophyte cell, right? A diploid sporophyte cell generally does not undergo meiosis, right? And it generally produces your gametophyte. It generally produces your diploid gametophyte. This process is generally called as apospory. Okay, now let's talk about apomixis in detail. Apomixis is of two different types. I have mentioned on the board. The first one is generally called recurrent apomixis and the second one is called non-recurrent apomixis, right? Very similar words you can see. Let's talk about recurrent apomixis. What happens in recurrent apomixis is that the embryo sac arises from the archisporial cell or the other part of the nucellus, right? So what happens here? The embryo sac formation is going to take place, but from what? It is either going to take place from a archisporial cell or any other part of the nucellus. We all know archisporial cell. They are the cells which are generally present at the hypodermal layer of the ovule, right? Now this archisporial cell may lead to the formation of the embryo sac, or the cells of the nucellus which are diploid parenchymatous cell are responsible for the formation of embryo sac. Such kind of a apomixis is generally called as recurrent apomixis. Now here also there are two stages. One is called diplospory and second is called apospory. Now what happens in diplospory? The diplospory, the formation of the embryo sac will generally takes place from a megaspore mother cell. We all know that megaspore mother cell is a diploid cell which is formed in the ovule, right? So from there, if there is a development of the embryo sac, we generally call it as diplospory. Second is apospory. Apospory means here the embryo sac development will generally takes place from the nucellus. Such kind of a spory is generally called as apospory. So the first one is recurrent apomixis. Recurrent apomixis says that there is a formation of embryo sac either from the nucellus or from the archisporial cell, right? Second type is nothing but non-recurrent apomixis. What happens in the non-recurrent apomixis is that megaspore mother cell undergoes meiotic division and haploid embryo sac is generally formed. You know very well, megaspore mother cell which is diploid in nature, it will undergo meiosis cell division and it will lead to the formation of a haploid embryo sac, right, during the process of megasporogenesis, right? Embryo arises either from the egg by parthenogenesis or from the other haploid cell of gametophyte. So either here there is a formation of your embryo from the egg cell by parthenogenesis without fertilization, or it can take place from the gametophytic cell by the process of apogamy, right? That is through apogamy a embryo sac would be formed. Now such kind of plants which are generally formed are generally sterile. They cannot undergo sexual reproduction. What obviously sterile means? They are infertile. Example is Nicotina, right? So this is all about your apomixis, that is without mixing of the gamete there is a formation of a new individual. That process is generally called as apomixis, right? Okay, now whenever you talk about this apomixis, that is without the help of the fertilization, I mean to say that is apomixis, a part of your asexual reproduction. The last topic is polyembryony. Poly is many and embryony is embryo. Now what do you mean by polyembryony? There is formation of more than one embryo in the seed is generally called as embryo. That is polyembryony. It was first time generally studied by the scientist Leeuwenhoek. He was the first scientist who for the very first time generally studied the polyembryony in the citrus fruit. Okay, now when you talk about this polyembryony, I said there is formation of more than one embryo in the seed. Now why there is formation of more than one embryo? Because there is more than one egg cell found in the embryo sac or in the ovule, right? And all the egg cell which have been present, that is more than one egg cell, all the egg cell are generally fertilized, which generally gives rise to the polyembryony. Polyembryony is majorly seen in the citrus fruit, like you can say lemon, mango, mosambi, groundnut, onion, etc. They generally show your polyembryony, right? Now when you talk about this polyembryony is also saying the basic funda, that is the polyembryony may be true or it may be false depending upon whether the embryo, how many embryos are generally formed in the same embryo sac or the different embryo sac of a ovule. Now, there are two types of polyembryony. One is called as adventive polyembryony and second is called as cleavage polyembryony. What happens in the adventive polyembryony? In adventive polyembryony, right, there is a formation, right? There is a formation of a embryo sac. There is a formation of a embryo sac, and that embryo sac is generally formed by a single unit. And when you talk about the next one, that is generally called as second one, which is generally called cleavage polyembryony. Cleavage is nothing but separation. So a zygote pro-embryo, whatever the zygote pro-embryo which is generally formed, that zygote pro-embryo will generally divide into parts or into unit, and that entire unit is generally going to lead to the formation of a embryo sac. That kind of a condition is generally called as cleavage embryony. Correct? Okay. So now what is the significance of polyembryony? First, it increases the survival chances for the new plant, right? And also adventive polyembryony plays a very important role in horticultural science for the development of the flowering plant. So there are two types of polyembryony, adventive polyembryony and cleavage polyembryony. Thank you very much.